Good afternoon, Giants. We are live. Welcome. My name is Joe Perrone, and this is the Freedom Hour on the Wake Up with Giants Network. I'm an entrepreneur and a strategist, and I help business owners and professionals design the life of their dreams. This show is designed to help you overcome the biggest roadblocks to your dream life. It will require you to examine your life deeper, find the gifts that you were given at birth. You will discover your strength, clarity, and purpose. You will discover freedom. A reminder to subscribe on YouTube and in the Facebook group of Tribe of Giants. Today on the show, I am so excited. We have Laban Ditchburn. Laban Ditchburn is an author, keynote speaker, and the world's best courage coach. We'll dig a little deeper on that one. He helps people bet on themselves. Laban, it is my honor and pleasure to have you on the show today, my friend.
Keep doing God's work, Joe Perrone. You are a beacon of light in a very dark world at times. So it's really very, very exciting for me to be on this amazing new show with you.
Laban, I love you for saying that. I just love who you are and who you show up with in the world, and you and your beautiful fiance, Anna. We had a chance to meet in Phoenix and break bread together. And you've shared so many things with me since we've met, and it seems like we've known each other forever, but it's been such a short physical period of time. And what I learned from you, and this is my first question for you, is you've discovered your strength, your clarity, and your purpose. And you took what you've learned on this journey thus far and created this amazing book. People, it's called Bet on You. Tell the audience how you took that giant step in the direction of your mission to serve others, and how has that created freedom for you?
I really would love people to stick with me when I share this story because it's unbelievable. And it was born from the greatest adversity ever. Many of you have heard some of my story, but in April 2020, when the world went to custard, I was just about to start my speaking career. I'd finally figured out that I wanted to become known as the world's most positively influential speaker, but I needed to start from somewhere, and I had some paid speaking gigs lined up, like $400 for a speaking event, right? Starting very, very greenhorn. And they were all canned as soon as coronavirus hit. We were living in Melbourne, Australia. And I was like, I need a way to get my message out. So I created the podcast series, Become Your Own Superhero. And like with 10 subscribers, I reached out to Les Brown, got him on the phone. He picks up the phone and he says, "Hi, Les speaking." I said, "Les Brown?" He said, "Yes, it is." I said, "Les Brown, it's Laban Ditchburn from Melbourne, Australia." He said, "Well, how can I help you, Laban?" I said, "Les, I'm the host of an amazing podcast series called Become Your Own Superhero. I'm a huge fan of the work that you do and the value you bring to the world. And I'd be honored if you came on and shared your amazing story with our audience. When are you available?" He said, "Well, when are you thinking, boy?" And I said, "To be honest, Les, whenever works with you is probably okay with me." And we coordinated this thing for 3 days later. I cannot believe my luck. And by the way, you create your own luck in case you haven't figured this out. I am scrambling. You should have seen the dicky setup we had. We had this precarious podcast, like with an 11-year-old laptop, and it was like it's just the most imagine the most disheveled setup you could possibly imagine, because I was new to this whole space. Had only recorded about 9 episodes at this point. Les comes on, and I just instinctively said to him, "Hey, Les, what do you think of the name of the show, Become Your Own Superhero?" And Joe, he absolutely nailed exactly what I hoped people would think when they heard the name Become Your Own Superhero. And I was so warmly endeared to this big teddy bear of a man who was a father figure in my life and had been a huge inspiration for me for like 3 or 4 years prior to this. And I just verbally diarrheaed my story of transformation to this great man, giving up drinking and drugs and gambling and philandering and all the other stuff that you've heard about. And if you haven't, it's in the book. Now, unbeknownst to me at the time, Les had gone through his own drug addiction problem, that his doctor had put him on painkillers without his knowledge for for prostate cancer that he'd gone through. So something I spoke about really resonated with him. And he just listened intently to me for about 7 or 8 minutes. And he just said, "Congratulations, Laban." I said, "Thanks, Les." He said, "Do you have a book?" And I went, "No." Now, I hadn't finished high school. I never went to college. I never really written anything. And he said, "You need a book for credibility if you're going to be in the speaking game." And I said, "Right." He said, "Who was the most influential person in your life when you were 5 years of age?" And I thought about it for a minute, and I was like, oh, man, was it my grandmother? And then I realized it was right in front of me. Despite her many, 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 many flaws, it was my amazing mother. And he goes, "What attributes did you get from your mother?" First time in my life I'd really thought about it. And maybe you could think about what attributes, the good attributes you get from your parents. Man, she was unconditionally loving and tenacious and spiritual. And he's writing all this stuff down. He looks up at me. He says, "Laban, this is a God moment." He said, "I'm going to show you how to monetize your passion." And for the next 10 minutes, the world's greatest motivational speaker, for free, reads back to me the blueprint for this book he wants me to write called Bet on You. He said, "Laban, you're going to write the book. If you need help, get help. You're going to release the book. You're going to turn it into a keynote. You're going to turn that keynote into a 3-day retreat." He said, "Even if you muck this up, you're going to make $200,000 in the next 12 months. And, Laban, I'm going to write the foreword for your book." Now, this was mid-May in 2020 in the grip of the lockdowns. And where we were living in Melbourne, we ended up having more than 280 days of stage 4 lockdown. So between mid-May and June 30, I said to him, "Les, if you're going to write the foreword for my book, I'll have it to you by June 30. And in 6 weeks, I punched out 30,000 words channeled by divine intervention through my body and onto the keyboard, and transformed my entire life in the process.
Laban, when I hear you tell this story, if it seems like the first time I've heard the story, but this is not the first time I've heard the story. And with every time that I hear it, I just get these gold nuggets from you of the actions that you took. And you are the world's best courage coach. And you took courageous action. You took courageous action by reaching out to Les Brown. You took courageous action by writing this book and getting it back into his hands as you promised. And you were a man of your word. What have you taken away? What freedom has this unlocked for you? What new world, what new experiences have you been a part of as a result of taking this massive action and doing the work?
It's really non-quantifiable at this point, but what I can tell you, it has transformed my life for the better. He was right. It is a great source of credibility. It has created credibility. It's given me backup. It's given me real value, and people are hearing these stories, and all of a sudden I can produce something in hard copy and say, here is the commitment that I made to Les Brown and the commitment that I made to myself. I don't know where that statement to produce, there was no reason to rush that out in 6 weeks, but I did it, and it just flowed through me like chocolate. It was very spiritual, and many of you know I don't identify with any religious beliefs, but I am about the most spiritual person I know. There is no denying that what happened was divine intervention, and my life continues to be divine intervention after divine intervention, I've got to say. And during this whole process, you must understand, I had lost my job. I used to work in recruitment. I had a crack at running my own business. I nearly went bankrupt like 3 or 4 times in 2019. In the meantime, Anna and I have had miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on in our lives. But this has given me a wonderful sense of clarity. It's had a wonderful impact on people's lives that were involved in the book and helped me get it over the line. You included, Joe, the influence you had in getting me the publisher and all the other stuff. And just getting emails from people that I've never met or messages from people I've never met saying, Laban, what you wrote in that book has transformed my life for the better. Thank you very much. That is a feeling that is very addictive, I've got to say.
And Laban, you have been inspired now, and we're gonna get to this in a second. You just had a recent experience with taking massive action on another part of this dream, another part of this promotion of this book, another part of helping and serving other people with this brilliant tool that you've created that was planted in you by Les Brown that you took action on. And I would love for you to tell the listeners about this new connection, this new realm that you've just opened up with one of your heroes.
Well, the world's best courage coach, when you make that kind of declaration, it creates something inside of you that I could never have explained until I really made that declaration. And it's like, well, I've made this declaration. How would the world's best courage coach actually conduct himself? And it makes you think about how you go about your business. Now, I had the beautiful fortune of staying with some really good friends of ours in Austin, Texas, just last week. They are incredibly successful. They are heart-centered, amazing people I met through this network of amazing people, and in their early 60s, but have more energy than most 25-year-olds, right? And it turns out that Joe Rogan, who had a massive impact on my life about 5 years ago, he interviewed guests who have shared knowledge with me that's allowed me to heal my autoimmune disease, to improve my mental, emotional, spiritual health, like countless knowledge. If you haven't heard of Joe Rogan's podcast, whatever you've heard about him in the press, ignore it, right? He is a powerhouse of knowledge. He's done thousands of podcast interviews. Now, we heard about him living down the river from where John and Ginger live, where we were in Austin. And I thought about, wouldn't it be great if I had an opportunity to thank Joe by writing that in the inside cover of my book and then driving by on a boat and then throwing it onto his back lawn, right? Hey, that's pretty cool. I don't think anyone would have ever done that before. Most people would be a bit worried about, the judgment factor or whatever. But hey, how would the world's best courage coach conduct himself? So this past Saturday, I prepared a number of books because we thought, you know what? Let's do it. Let's throw it on a few other people's back lawns. The book was written and intended specifically to help people. It's the book that I wish that I had 10 years before I started my journey. So and I wrote, dear neighbor, consider this book my gift to you. If you get any value from it, let me know. And I put my phone number in there as well. But anyway, we're cruising up the river and we spy Joe Rogan's house, which is worth about $40 million, just by the way. And that shows you the power of getting into podcasting. And there's people on the dock. And I'm like, what is that? And as we get a bit closer, I look at the outline of this big nuggety silhouette. And it's Joe Rogan with his dog Marshall. His daughter's there and he's got another friend on the boat. And I'm like, oh my God, like I wasn't anticipating this. I didn't prepare any speech for if I bump into Joe Rogan. So as we're getting closer, I'm just like, hey, Joe. And he's like, yeah. Like wondering who the hell are these strange people? I'm like, I got a present for you. And we're getting closer. He's like, how have you got a present for me? And as we get closer, Anna, my amazing fiance, I might be the world's best courage coach, but she's the most courageous person I know. She goes, you saved his life. Now, technically, she's right. And he's like, I didn't save his life. How did I save his life? He starts asking these questions. And then I start talking about, well, it was the guest that you had on, Joe. And we're getting closer. And he can see that we are friend and not foe at this point. And in 90 seconds of absolute magic, I was able to beautifully toss my book inside this plastic sheath in this beautiful arc spinning backwards, and it landed smack bang in the middle of the boat, ready for Joe Rogan. And in that moment, I just gave my book to Joe Rogan, complete with my phone number, should he like to give me any feedback on the book.
Yeah, I saw the video, and don't ever go against Laban in a cornhole tournament because this man's got to throw. This man's got to throw like you wouldn't believe. And you aced You aced that throw up on the dock. But this all came about because you decided that this was possible for you. You had the courage. What would the world's best courage coach do when faced with this imagined experience that you were going to have, and you did it? What would you say, Laban, to those people that right now they're not betting on themselves? They're just they're in the lack mindset. They don't believe in themselves that they could do these things, and they hear you on this podcast and they see your book and they've heard your stories, and they're not reading this book as it's intended, as you intended it to be read about yourself, to bet on yourself. What are some of those things that you can really hone in on to get them to take that action today?
There's a great quote from a guy, Keith Abraham, who's an Australian motivational speaker, who was a guest on my podcast about a year and a bit ago. And he said to me that really something really stuck. And there's variations of this that you might have heard from other speakers and whatever. But he said, when the why becomes clear, the how becomes easy. When the why becomes clear, the how becomes easy. I believe the first thing that you need to do is figure out why. Why am I on this planet? What is my reason for being here? And as soon as you figure that out, and it can take time, I'm real good at it. I'm real good at helping people find it now, if you need some help with that. All right. It took me 40 years to really figure it out until I became clear on the world's best courage coach. But there's a pretty simple formula, and it is very simple. It's the best things in life are the most simple, right? But I think you've got to figure out your reason, because if you don't have a reason for wanting to go up the river and throw a book onto your favorite person's backyard, like, you just won't do it. There's so much fear of judgment and shame. And I really have been practicing this whole what people think of me is none of my business. And it's paying dividends. And I only choose to surround myself with like only quality people, as Les Brown would say, OQP, only quality people. And because most of the former circle of friends I used to kick around with would have talked me out of that. Oh, no, don't do that. Joe doesn't want to be, bothered, whatever. Why would he want to do that? Well, this book, I know is really good. I know it's really good. I know it's going to help a lot of people. And what people don't realize about writing a book, 1% of it is writing the book. 99% is spending the rest of your life marketing the hell out of it. All right? And if you write from a place of authenticity and realness and put something out there that you are truly proud of, this stuff is a no-brainer for me. I got an obligation to get this into the hands of people that need it, that want it. They just don't realize yet. And so how would I expedite that whole process? I don't know how long I'm going to be on this planet for. I know I want to live for a long time, but I could be hit by a bus tomorrow. I want to make most of the time while I got it, right? That's freedom.
That is freedom. And that why that you have, tell us more about that why, because I know you and I know your why and the purpose that you have, and you feel the deep sense of obligation to get this message out to help people. If you haven't heard Laban's interview with Craig Carton of WFAN, it's a great interview, and Craig had his own battle with gambling addiction, and you, in that interview, I truly believed when I listened to it that you helped him even deeply understand more of his obligation, not just as a community service effort to appease his employer, but I heard you transfer that obligation to Craig. And I just want to talk more about that obligation that you do feel, because it is powerful, and you are doing it, and you are taking action steps daily to help others free up that space that they need in their life to go out and create what they're obligated to create. Tell me more.
When you understand and you get it, because that's how you and I connected, through Bob Berg and the Go-Giver. When you understand there's a couple of ways in life that you can make a life for yourself. One of them is ripping people off and constantly being on your guard and worried about people taking advantage of you because you've wronged so many people. There's that way. No doubt you can earn money that way. But there's a best way And it's not the easiest way or the fastest way, but it's through service. And so I go into people have heard me talk about this as well. I genuinely go into every single interaction with what value can I add this person's life. And it's really made me super dialed in, conscious about how I speak in the language that I use. And that generates, it's selfish because I want other people around the world with my levels of self-belief and courage and bravery, because I can't do this by myself. All right. So how do I inspire people to do that? Well, I've got to lead by example. I have to do this. And I've gone through major adversity. Have I gone through the worst thing in the world? I think so. But there's no point comparing my situation to someone else who's been, 99% of their body burnt alive when they were a baby and had to deal with that kind of thing. That's their gift. My gift was being a child of divorce and growing up in a really shitty environment. And that will resonate with the right people. So I've now got an obligation, now that I've been able to conquer a lot of these demons through a lot of self-discovery, I need to pay this stuff forward. Because I've learned all of this stuff from other people that are further along than I. So I'm just temporarily holding on to it and then handing over the torch. And if you don't believe that you've got enough of a story or an impact, then you're lying to yourself, because you do. And as soon as you figure that shit out, then you can live a life that is so wonderfully fulfilling that you can really never have a bad day.
I believe that you were put on this earth to really shift the perception of courage and that we need to be a courage culture, because we only get one chance. We're here. This isn't a dress rehearsal. This is a one-act play. And you brilliantly have shared so many stories with me, and I've had the blessing to know you now for what seems like a long amount of time, but physical time has been a short amount, and we've learned so much from each other. And you talk about your mom, and I would just love to hear more about the stories you've shared with me, but share with the listeners here about how those moments with your mom and how you've taken that now where you teach others courage and freedom. Tell me more of those stories, please.
Well, the relationship that I had with my mum for a very long time, most of my adult life, was tumultuous, to say the best, right? There would be times, I believe, where we spoke less than once a year to my own mother. And she lives back in New Zealand. And so I've been in Australia for the last 20 years up until recently. And every time we'd get on the phone, there'd be a fight erupt. And she grew up in a horribly dysfunctional environment with an abusive alcoholic father. She suffered immeasurably, but rather than focusing on that, I was just like, I had to cut her out of my life for a period of time. So there is a lot to be said about setting very clear and strong boundaries. And then I just started to lean into what I'm doing and what's happening, not just with my mother, but other people in my family, that I set clear boundaries and just basically said, you know what, you don't get to be in my life right now. Until you start adding value, suffering your jocks, right? And people are like, oh, you can't do that to your family. Watch me. Watch me, including my own father, all right? If people are not serving you well, including your own family members, keep them at arm's length until they do, all right? It's like discipline. And what's happening is, recently, my mother has become my number one fan. She said to me recently, she said, Laban, I'm so proud of you. Because our parents, they find it really hard to see us differently from what we were when we were young, when we put those formative year imprints into our mind. That even no matter how much self-development you do, whether you're crushing it in the corporate world, they still see you as this, pimply little teenager, whatever you're doing. But now she's really starting to see the value in what I'm doing. And I'm not doing it for validation from my mum, but it's wonderful. Her and I are the closest we've ever been. We speak once a week now on a FaceTime. I'm excited to share these crazy things with her, because guess what? That's where I got most of my courage from. My mum's outrageous individual. And I need to embrace that. I'm grateful for that. I've forgiven her, I've forgiven my father, forgiven all the other people that did what they did to me. And I've, in the process, have freed myself up. I don't spend any time worrying about family members that were causing me grief.
And that forgiveness really created freedom for you. And those setting of those boundaries that you reset created a lot of freedom for you. I wonder if you would share some of the things that you had to do, take courage to release that energy that you held and forgave people. And I've worked with people that forgiveness was their number one problem. They had things blocking them for 20 years because they held on to an energy and a belief for 20 years. Talk to us more about how forgiveness has played such an impact in your freedom and your moving forward on this awesome journey of serving others.
Well, I've got to say, Joe, I was really inspired by some amazing acts of forgiveness. And one of them was with Dr. Fred Luskin, who was a guest on the podcast. I brought him on after having a huge fight with my father maybe 18 months ago, which stemmed from me trying to help him when he didn't want help. There's another lesson there, folks, right? Unrequited help. Don't do it. His health was suffering, and I'd interview all these experts and Nobel Prize winners on how to fix my father, and he didn't want a bar of it. He even told me he didn't believe in me and what I was doing at one point. So I disowned him, and I told him that in a text message, in a flurry of hate-filled text messages, right? And I was like, I don't like how I feel after doing this, and in fact, I felt the worst I'd ever felt. So I brought Dr. Fred Luskin on, who founded the Forgiveness Project, and started learning more about why forgiveness was so important, and realized it was nothing to do with the perpetrator. It was all to do with releasing me of what I call the tether of tyranny. And, learning from Fred Luskin, I read his book before I interviewed him. It was so helpful. Jewish Holocaust survivors were forgiving the camp commanders years later. And I'm like, man, if they can forgive him, then I can forgive, my mum and my dad and all this other stuff. With what Anna's gone through with her story, I'm sure she'll have an opportunity to share in the future with what she went through with abuse and forgiving the perpetrator who did that to her. I'm like, I've got some great role models in my life for people that have forgiven. And I've seen the wonderful impact that has happened on their life when they've forgiven. Before my book launch, I had my oldest brother, my younger sister, and my auntie who I hadn't spoken to for 3 years, 18 months, and 3 years respectively, right? And they're idiots, right? And that's why, living in victim zone, and I was like, that's it. You're out of my life. And I was like, oh man, I got this book coming out, and I really don't want to repair this in the future, having regretted not giving them the opportunity to witness something that I think's very special in our family, who don't have a history of any tertiary education or any of this stuff. So it's a big deal, right? And so I sent them all the same message, just with a different name. And it went along the lines of, hey, bro, who's my older half-brother, I'm sorry for whatever I've said in the past that's caused this rift. I've done a lot of growing up. I've got this book launch coming up, and I'd love for you to have an invite to turn up. I don't expect us to be best buddies or whatever. Did that with my brother and my auntie and my sister, and they all responded. And none of them said, I'm sorry back. And I was like, And then Anna said to me, did you send that conditionally, wanting a apology back? And I was like, So I had to send another message back to them saying, again, I'm sorry. I sent that conditionally. My bad. Sending this with love. And what happened, and what it has been happening, is pretty remarkable. My sister turned up to the event. My older crazy auntie, she wanted nothing to do with it. My brother, I don't think, turned up to the book launch, but he eventually screeched out I'm sorry too at some point. And the beautiful part about it was that I stopped investing any time. I didn't realize how much time I was thinking about these people, right? And getting triggered and getting agitated and building my cortisol levels and wasting time and energy thinking about it. And then as time has gone by, the crazy auntie sent me a really lovely message just last week after a famous cricketer died in Australia, and how it reminded her of me and when I was a young boy. And I was like, hey, thanks, Tracy. Like, I really appreciate that a lot. And so this is the power of forgiveness, right? I know it's relieved them of their tether of tyranny, but I don't spend any time thinking about them. We don't hang out a lot. We don't need to hang out a lot. If I never speak to them again, guess what? I'm okay with that too. But I think what's happening, and what I've seen with my mum especially and my father, that those relationships have no choice but to improve.
And you've created so much freedom around this forgiveness, and it's unlocked for you just amazing opportunities. You've shared this event you have coming up, this major event in September coming up that I'm so excited for. You have some of the biggest names in personal and self-development that we have, including, and I'll spoil it, but I will, because this is my show and I can do whatever the hell I want. Les Brown, releasing that negative energy that you were holding on to, moving forward, reclaiming your time, your freedom, your energy, to now focusing on the courageous acts that you need to do because you feel the obligation and you know you have this call on your life to serve and help others, has led to the creation of this book in 6 weeks, has led to a wildly successful book launch that was very well attended, very exciting. And now to this major event that is going to change people's lives. Please tell us more about this event and how you've taken this energy and created this amazing event.
Well, I gotta give credit to Tony Schmaltz for coming up with this initiative and bringing me on as a partner as well, because he's the one that has really kicked this off, and we are collaborating at a rate of knots. I'm staying with him in his place in Panama City in Florida at the moment, with him and his lovely wife Anika and Anna and I, and it's so great being in person to be able to create. And if you can do that, I'd really recommend it. But upgradeyourlifetour.com is a bringing together of what we believe to be the best in the business, and an in-person event that has not been seen in the last 2 years anywhere on the planet. Everything's gone to virtual. This is an in-person thing. The people that are all involved, give or take, have all featured in my life previously as guests of the podcast, and here's the secret about forgiveness. The people playing at the top, the people that are involved with this event, the speakers, they don't have issues with forgiveness. They've dealt with them so that they can focus on being in creation mode. I'm not saying that they are perfect. Far from it. We're all deeply flawed individuals, right? So we should be. That's part of God's perfect design, that we are flawed, right? But these people you don't hear them whinging about stuff. They're like, how can we help? How can we make this the best event ever? Let's have you on the show. We're doing a live stream with Les Brown on his Facebook later on today, like 5 p.m. Central Time, I think it is. How did that happen? The guy's got a couple of million followers on there. Like, how did that happen? From me making that phone call to Les to all of a sudden sharing a stage with him in September this year, September 17th and 18th, by the way. Lock it in your diaries. Panama City Beach, Florida. Come and hang out at the beach during the break. And I kind of got a bit sidetracked, got a bit excited, but did that answer your question?
That did answer my question, but I'm going to make you work a little bit here today, is with the question that the actions that you had to take had to be courageous. They have to be. We have to take action. We have to do. We can't wish it into existence. We can't want it into existence. We can't just desire it into existence. At some point, it takes our action. And if our energy is focused in unforgiveness and unproductivity and unessential activities, Jim Rohn, we're majoring in minor things. You've taken this to a whole new level. You don't major in minor things. You know what's important. You know why this matters. You know your why. To those people that have that obligation to serve other people, we network with many coaches, with many consultants, with many speakers that aren't having the success that you are having, and they want that freedom to create. They want that energy that you have, that you always bring to the table. What are some simple things that they can do today? As soon as we get off this podcast, as soon as they listen to the replay, they can get off and they could take action, take courageous action from Laban Ditchburn.
You got to know your worth. I think you really got to know your worth and stop giving shit away for free. Stop not charging enough so that you're worrying about the bills. Start putting a premium on you as an individual. If you share one thing with someone that you're coaching that shaves 20 years off their learning curve, what possible dollar amount can you put on that? It is priceless. It is priceless. And the moment that you realize that you have significant value, and you've got to practice this, you've got to eliminate all negative self-talk. You'll never hear me speak poorly of myself, not on purpose. If it is, it's by total accident. I'm willing to admit that. And start surrounding yourself with people that will lift you up. You got to get in the room with these people. Look at the people that are where you want to be. And when it comes to money, I don't talk about money with clients until I've done it and proven it. That's the one area that I am very honest and proud to say, this is not my area of expertise just yet. But when it is, I'll share everything I have to know. But there's the other stuff. The amount of free stuff that I've been given through acts of service worth literally millions of dollars. You know, that in itself is a skill set. And so you've got to believe that you have something of value, and until you do, no one else is gonna put that value on you. You know, everyone talks about Steve Hardison's rates, and I think it's unbelievably brilliant. It's the reason why he gets such great outcomes, because these people are like, I've invested all this money, I want to get the best outcome. So they put all their biases to the side more. And so that's why you got to charge for your services. You can't offer free classes for months and give your shit away for free. You're doing them a disservice. And I'm learning that very quickly. I'm seeing the power of it. And you know, and I know the coaching you do as well, Joe, there's a big investment for people, because it's the commitment that we need. Those level people to make the biggest commitments, and you're going to get the best miraculous outcomes.
And the commitments, that's where the money is. That's where the success is, making those small commitments. And you know, I know you're a man of commitment and man of your word. The commitments that you made, tell us more about some of those early commitments, like the 6 weeks. Where did you have to dig deep and find in yourself in those 6 weeks? After you got off that call with Les Brown, that was a life-changing call and a seed planted in your life, you had to take action. You had to put pen to paper. You had to sit down, get clear, be quiet, and channel those words, those 30,000 words. What else did you have to do? What other commitments who did Laban have to become in that moment to make it to that next step and make that commitment of getting to the book to Les?
We all find ourselves with different motivations and different levels of commitment that we can make. For me, I need to be held accountable, but I don't like being told what to do. So I need to create the accountability. So I just blurted out. It was my spirit coming through me, giving it that commitment. I'll do this by June 30, 6 weeks from now. And so I was like, there is no way on God's green earth I'm letting down Les Brown. Now, I'm willing to bet, because it took months and months to even contact Les after that, I'm willing to bet he didn't even look at it for months. Doesn't matter. I was a man of my word. I was a man. There was no way I was letting down Les Brown. And what that's created since, I was able to serve Les. I was able to introduce him to some medical experts that have been able to help him with his cancer stuff. We've been able to bring him onto this event. We're having dinner with him in Georgia next month. Like, all because I made that commitment. If I hadn't delivered on that, none of this would have happened. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here in Panama City with Tony Schmaltz. None of it.
And I want to pull that apart because you said the gold and you said the key right there. You were in service to Les too. Les said, "Hey, Laban, you have this book in you. You agreed and you commit to writing this book in 6 weeks. But you also thought enough about Les to want to serve him and want to sow seed back into his life. He planted that seed of this book with you. Talk to people about they might not have the money, but they have the time, they have the energy, they have the connections, and they have the willingness to serve other people. What could they do today? What could they do today to start serving others? Keep those listening ears open for their network.
I'll give you a great example. Remember I said every single interaction I go into, I ask, what value can I add this person's life? I might have shared this story, and apologies if you've heard it, but it's a great story. I'm going to share it again. I ordered a lift back in Phoenix about a month ago, and I could see on my phone that the lady's name was April. And I knew nothing more than that, and it was a 10-minute ride. I jump in the car, didn't even say hello, and I start singing that Dragon song, that band from New Zealand. Take me to the April sun in Cuba. Whoa, whoa. She cracks up laughing. She says, wow. She says, you're in a great mood today. And I said, April, my life is a daily miracle. And she said, that's so great to hear, Laban. I said, what miracle have you created today? And she said, do you know what, Laban? I can't really think of anything I've done today. I said, that's okay. I said, what's the miracle that you're most proud of creating? And as quick as a flash, she says to me, Laban, 5 years ago, I reconnected with my father who left when I was a baby. And we repaired our relationship and we spent 5 glorious years together. And we made amends before he passed away. I was like, whoa. I said, that's congratulations, by the way. And I said, that is fantastic. She said, thank you, Laban. I appreciate that a lot. She said, I'm trying to set a role model for my kids. She's working her tail off, working, 80 hours a week, driving Lyft and Uber, plus whatever else cleaning job she's doing. And she's a Native American background as well. She's in her late 50s. And I said, April, and I heard this at the event with Steve Hardison. I said, have you ever hated someone that you didn't know? And she said, oh, yes. And I said, well, then is it possible that you can love someone that you don't really know? And she said, of course. And I said, I love you, April. I love you. She bursts into tears, guttural weeping. I don't think she's had a cry like that for a while, given the amount of water that flowed forth, right? We get out of the car instinctively and just embraced each other for a couple of minutes. Pretty sure I got a 5-star rating for that one. But she said to me, Laban, she said, you have no idea how badly I needed to hear that today, like in between sobbing. And it was tears of joy. And I just walked away from that experience absolutely levitating. Absolutely levitating. There was no financial transaction to gain. She didn't buy a book, although a few Uber drivers have. There was no monetary gain that could have been gotten out of that. But here's the magic in all this, Joe. What I walked away with is momentum and energy. And I took that into the other shops that I was going to get some new running shoes. And I ended up having some more powerful conversations with people about helping them figure out their reason for being on the planet, right? That's the beauty of it. You're just carrying that energy forward. It's like playing Sonic the Hedgehog and collecting all the rings, like you cash the rings at the end of the round and use them all to fight the bot at the end of it. And I think that's a great metaphor for life. Accumulate that momentum through service and you'll never have a bad day again.
What prevents people from taking these simple actions? That didn't cost you a dime to ask her those questions. Didn't it cost a dime for you to listen deeply, to give her to get that hug, to receive. You received that hug from her. And it generated these feelings, generated this energy that you took, as you said, to through the rest of your day and served people that much more brilliantly than you already do. What prevents people from doing that sometimes?
I think it's a couple of things, Joe. It's a really great thing to think about. I think one, people don't know how to do it, and when you don't know how to do something, you fear it. So it all comes down to fear, right? Fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment or shame, or I'm prying into people's personal lives. What right have I got to do that? I've done it enough now, like thousands of times over the last 3 or 4 years, literally thousands of times. And not that exact same scenario, but very similar. And I think when you're not tied to any outcome, like some people, some Uber drivers, you get in there, you're full of beans, full of energy, and they give you nothing. Absolutely nothing. In fact, you can tell that they are agitated by your energy, but because I'm getting a lot better at picking up on that, I just let it be. Sit in the back, do my thing on my phone, whatever I'm going to do, right? That's them. It's nothing to do with me. But am I going to stop doing that for the 99.9% of people that benefit from it? Hell no. Start practicing. What do you need help with in your next Uber ride? And they'll go, what do you mean? Well, if you could wave a magic wand, or if you're a person of faith, pray a prayer that would be guaranteed to be answered in an environment where gravity doesn't even need to exist, what's the one thing that you would do to improve your life right now? You would be astonished at what people will tell you. Uber drivers, I need more money. Why do you need more money? Just start asking questions. Like Hardison says, power is in the listener. Just shut up and listen. Who, what, how, when, why. People will tell you everything you need to know in that moment, and that's what makes a great coach, I think. What do you reckon, Joe?
Giving the gift of a listening ear, giving the gift of attention and focus, giving those gifts that don't cost us anything, but they make the biggest impact. They make the world a better place, truly. And it's not, just a cute saying. It's not just something on an air quote we'll see later on Facebook or Instagram. It's the real deal. And you do this. You take action. You have the courage to take action. How do you teach other people when they come to you and they say, Laban, I have this giant dream. I have this dream and this why, and I don't have the courage to get started. You get them to do these simple things. What keeps that momentum going for them? What keeps that momentum to that next creation? Okay, they did the simple things. They reached out to their Uber driver. They listened. They sat there and they absorbed it and looked for ways to serve other people. How does that energy continue? And what should they look for every single day in their creation?
Well, a positive feedback loop. You'll know you're doing the right thing when you get an overwhelming positive response. If you're not, then you need to look at what you're doing. And you're probably doing it with conditions attached to it, right? That's really important distinction. Give with zero expectation of anything in return, because then you can never be disappointed, right? But let me ask the audience this question. When you're asking someone a question, and you really think about some conversations you've had in the past, and you want to know something, and rather than you butting in, you just continue to listen, I find that most people answer the question that you had if you give them enough time to speak anyway. And if they don't, then you can probe with further questions, right? And maybe that's a skill that's been sort of honed by interviewing lots of people where I don't do as much talking, and learning how to actively listen and be present rather than trying to formulate my next question. They often give you the answers, and that's what I think makes a great podcast host, just actively listening and then probing further questions based on the response.
and doing these things without expectation, differentiate that for me from receiving. When you give, you will get back in multiples of what you've put out. It might not be from the same person that you gave to, but we've talked about this before in expecting to receive and but not being attached to any outcomes of how it happens. Tell me some of the things that you've received and how do you receive that, knowing that this was a gift from a seed you planted years ago. It could have been the smallest seed that you planted, whether it was just a listening ear in an Uber ride. But tell me some of the exciting things you've received and how you were able to receive it.
Man, this is going to make the next book. There's going to be a whole book on this experience. A recent one is with Kevin Sorbo, right? Everyone knows Hercules. If you haven't heard of Hercules, you would have heard of Xena Warrior Princess. #1 TV show in the 1990s on the planet, syndicated in 177 countries. I don't even think there was that many countries, but there is. A conversation that Tony Schmaltz and I had with him when we were talking about bringing him to speak at this event. So he will be speaking at this event. He's confirmed in, right? And I said to him, Kevin, what do you need help with? And he said, I'm always trying to get funding for movies, because ever since he's kind of been shunned by the left in Hollywood, he's had to get his own funding for these faith-based movies. And the movies that he puts out there, whether you're a fan of Sorbo or not, they are intended to help people, and they do that, right? He's doing God's work. And I said, well, what about creating enough income where you can fund your own movies? And my brain, because I'm operating at a service level, is already subconsciously thinking about ways that I can serve Sorbo, right? And he said, well, that'd be fantastic. And I said, let me make an introduction. Now, I introduced him to Evans Putman. And Evans Putman, people who know in the group, him and I are great mates and business partners and creating this amazing empire together. His coaches have the knowledge and the resources to take Kevin's existing social media base to generate literal millions per year. And I was able to facilitate that introduction. I totally forgot about introducing Evans to Sorbo. It was only a few weeks ago too. I've had a lot going on, right? And then Evans said, mate, we had a great meeting with Kevin and his coach, Joe, and they're going to work together. And then if that comes off, inadvertently, there will be referral fees coming to me, which could be in the six-figure, right? And I gave that information to Sorbo with I didn't even know there was a referral thing. And I was like, holy shit. Like, imagine if I got 20 of those coming in a year, right? Just through service, which is free. And that's just one of countless examples that are starting to manifest. They're starting to build up momentum now. The Rolling Stone, right? Starting to happen more and more and more. Don't get me wrong, still got my financial challenges, still go through periods of lack. You know, Anna and I have been on the road for 6 months trying to figure out where we're going to live, where we're going to, got to get visas, got to get married, got to make a baby, got to get money for this. There's still lots of stuff going on. But do you think I've got any fear about the future? It doesn't matter what's going to happen to the world. Even if it blows up, I know I'll be okay.
Laban, I just love your outlook. I love you. I love everything you're about. I love this. I love this book and how it serves other people. Where can people find you, Laban? Because I know they're going to want to know more. I know they're going to want to listen to this episode again and just recreate this experience of listening to these stories and finding out how they can bet on themselves. So where can people find you, Laban?
We're splashed across all of your favorite social media platforms. We even got a TikTok account, which I don't really look at much. But if you punch Laban Ditchburn onto any search engine, there's only one of me on the planet. I can assure you that, folks. But otherwise, labanditchburn.com. It's got all the links to the book and the podcast and all the other stuff. If you're really looking for me, you'll find me. Don't worry about that.
And I have to acknowledge our friend Steve Hardison. You are like betting on last year's Super Bowl. And we love you, Steve Hardison. We love you, Laban Ditchburn. We love you, Tribe of Giants. And it was an honor and a pleasure. And it continues to be a pleasure to be your friend. And it was great to connect with you out in Arizona. Folks, remember to pick up a copy of Laban's book, Bet on You. Get your friend a copy. Get everybody in your family a copy. We need more of this. We need this book to sell out, be a bestseller, get it in everybody's hands that you know. And if you want to hear more of Laban, the audiobook version is amazing. That courageous voice will inspire you to action. Thank you, listeners. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share this episode in your network. Be that giant in your network, and we'll see you next week on the Freedom Hour. Thanks again, Laban.
Thanks, brother. Love your work. Keep it up.
Thank you.